Some take months, years, and even decades to write a book start to finish. Today's guest challenged himself to do it in only 24 hours, live on the internet for all the world to see. There is more to surviving a 24-hour writing marathon than just having a fresh story idea and pot of coffee, and we're going to find out what. So, to explain how he prepared and kept going as the clock ticked down, our guest joins us today, Jeffrey H. Haskell. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love being on this show. You two are amazing, and it's a great place to come.
Well, we love having you, and we can't wait to dig into this. I know all of our live viewers out there right now. Corey, hello. Josh, hello. How y'all doing? There's 5 other people watching. I don't know who you are, but hello. Can't wait to dig in. So, you just completed this 24-hour challenge that was giving me heart palpitations.
A week ago Tuesday, right?
It was just last week or earlier this week.
Yeah,
I've lost track of time. Last week, yeah. So how did that go? Like overall, what is your overall?
My overall takeaway was it was amazing. It was so much fun. For one, it was way more fun than I thought it was going to be. Not just the actual writing bit, but the people being involved. There's a lot of energy. I'm an extrovert, so I kind of feed off of a crowd. And so having a whole bunch of people on to talk to me and ask me questions and kind of in some cases just bounce my ideas off of them as I was writing. It was a lot of fun, and I am planning on doing it again.
So why'd you decide to do it?
Rebecca, my wife, me and her were listening to a radio show. No, me and her were having lunch in the car listening to the radio. There we go. She decided to read me this article, and it was about YouTube. And I had just read an article by this YouTuber named Mr. Beast, who apparently is very famous. And he talked about how the way you so she read me this article about him explaining how you become successful, and on YouTube anyways. And he said it was really easy to do. All you have to do is do something incredibly hard that requires a ton of willpower.
So easy, so easy.
Is that it? Oh,
incredibly.
And his first YouTube video that went to 1 million views was him sitting in front of a camera, literally for 48 hours, counting from 1 to 100,000.
Oh,
1,
my.
2, 3.
Oh,
yeah.
my goodness.
Wow.
And since then, a lot of people have done that. People have counted to 1 million, that kind of thing. But I don't necessarily want to be a YouTube star. But I do like the camera, and I do like recording and stuff like that. So I figured, why don't I combine, do some non-conventional marketing, as I like to call it, and get my get a good kickstart on my book that I'm contractually obligated to write for Tantor Media. And do all these things in one go, and something outrageous enough that people would see it and go, oh, hey, I want to watch that, or I want to be involved in that.
Bring them in with a challenge.
And I love that.
Exactly.
I popped in, and you're just doing your thing, and I totally distracted you, which I'm sorry, but it was fun. You're sitting here, you're cranking out, the story, you're doing the thing. You had the timer right there in your face. I'm watching you, and I'm just I need to log off here because I'm having a panic attack.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't do good with those kind of 24-hour things. I mean, I suppose I could try, maybe, hopefully not fail.
I've been doing this a while now, and I guess a lot of things, you have to change things up every once in a while to keep things interesting. I didn't write a superhero book last year. I went from writing, in 2017 I wrote 4 books. In 2018 I wrote 6 books. In 2019 I wrote 8 books. In 2020 I wrote 1 book. And
seems to be the kind of the trail, that 2020.
Yeah, that 2020 hiccup. And so I thought, what better way to start the year off than do something outrageous, do something that would challenge me as a writer and as a person. And the moment I posted the little graphic, I knew I'd done the right thing, because so many people were just excited about the idea. How do you write a book in 24 hours? How do you prepare? What do you do? How do you stay awake? And I was talking to Chris Fox about it, and because he was one of the people who was really excited about it, so I knew I'd scored if he was excited about it. And he told me that he's like, writing the words and staying awake isn't going to be your problem. You're going to be so excited once you're on the camera. It's going to be easy. He's like, you're big. The thing you need to worry about is capitalizing on the event to make sure that as many people as possible can see it and view it and that kind of thing. So he was right. I mean, I had 2 spots of about 10 minutes each where I was worried I was going to, fatigue out, and that was it.
So speaking of all the questions people were asking you, what kind of preparation kind of went into this? Because John Evans wants to know, how big of an outline maybe that you perhaps may have had, and to give yourself that. I'm reading the question as I'm trying to not read the question. So to give yourself that best chance, at succeeding this book in 24 hours.
There was no outline.
Oh, and the truth is out.
There was nothing, actually.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, pants are extraordinary.
But you knew you were going to do this for weeks in advance because you'd been advertising it, and you told yourself, I'm going to do it from scratch, from start to finish.
Blank page to finished draft. Now that didn't happen. The finished draft part. Hold on a second, let me get some better light here.
So what was your overall goal then? So if you didn't complete everything, what was the word count, I guess, that you're sort of...
Well, my overall goal was 48,000 plus words, right? Because I figured 2,000 words an hour, which is what I usually write, or at least what I used to write back when I was counting all the time. So I figured I could hit 48,000 words, no problem. And that did not happen at all. My final word count ended up being 23,800 and something words.
Yeah, but I mean, God, that's 1,000 words an hour.
Yeah.
Constantly, nonstop. Yeah. That is amazing.
Well, that is still amazing. More than that, though, because I didn't write for a full hour every time. What I did was I would write for 45 minutes, and then I'd take a 15-minute break. And so part of my preparation, I did more preparing for this from a physical, mental perspective than I did from a writing perspective. I have concerns about my hands. I've been working on computers my whole life, and so I know what my hands are capable of and what they're not. I don't have carpal tunnel or anything like that. Because I've been working on computers my whole life, I've always taken really good care of my wrists and my hands to avoid anything like that. And so I was concerned about my hands hurting after a few hours of typing. I was concerned about headaches because I get really, really bad headaches. And I was concerned about hydration and alertness. So those are my big things. So I did a lot of research about what I needed to do to stay up for 24 hours on purpose. I've stayed up 18 hours, no problem. I mean, I get up at 5 or 6 every morning, and I don't go to bed till 10 or 11. So I mean, it's like 18 hours. What's another 5 or 6 hours? Well, there's a difference between just doing that by accident because you're doing other things, and then doing it on purpose and not really moving a lot. So I do a lot of research. Brandon Ellis helped me out with sending me some videos about stretches. He's a physical therapist, or was a physical therapist before he was an author. So I had a stretch routine set up. The Army did a lot of research on how much caffeine is the optimal amount to keep you alert and awake. And they were
how much is that?
This is a good question.
12-ounce can an hour.
Say that again?
12-ounce can of Coke an hour.
Okay.
And they were 100% right. I felt fresh the whole day. Except for, like I said, 2 p.m. in the afternoon and 2 a.m., which circadian rhythm-wise is your most tired time. And then I had snacks. I had I'm on a no-carb diet, so I had a lot of jerky and almonds and things like that. I say no-carb, low-carb, almonds and things like that to eat. And Powerade to stay hydrated and have something to drink, and then some tea for when my throat started to hurt because I knew I was going to be talking a lot. So that came in handy. About midnight, I started making tea because my throat was really hurting. So that was the majority of the physical preparation I went into. But word-wise, I've written 4 Wraith books. I've had her in 5 books because she guest stars in the last of the Arsenal series called Ultimate Arsenal that came out a year ago last month. And so I've written her in 5 different books. I know the character really well because the character is basically John Wick, Punisher, and Batman rolled into one. So it's not like easy to write, but it's not. Her motivations are very, very clear. Her emotional arcs are there, and she has a great dichotomy with this little demon inside of her that she talks to all the time, who gives her powers. So I say demon. She's not really a demon, kind of in the Robert Aspirin sort of sense, because she's from another dimension. So I didn't have to really prepare too much. I just had to come up with a really good title, and I did, Apex Predator. And and then I wrote an action scene, with her in the beginning, shooting some people, and everything just flowed from there. And there was one point, I want to say 8 or 9 o'clock at night, I got a little stuck and I had to walk around the hotel room a little bit. And then there was another point, I think about 4, I got a little stuck and had to walk around the hotel room a little bit. But for the most part, it was, other than when Walt Robillard would not leave me alone, tempting me to talk about guns and getting my opinion on superheroes, it was great. I mean, there was no problem.
So that was actually one of my number one questions was, with this writing this 24-hour book, this isn't like a new world. This isn't, or what it sounds like, this isn't like new characters. You already have gone into the heads of characters. You know the motivations. So, do you think that made it? Well, I mean, I guess you technically already said made it easier to like keep pushing forward because you didn't have to keep finding, I guess, new motivations. Or I guess I'm going to change my question a little bit since you sort of answered it. What would you think, like, if you were to do it again, like, would your preparation be different if you're like, okay, I've got this all new story idea, all new characters?
No.
He's like the Panther like king. He's just like, nah, let's write the words.
I work really hard at writing the cleanest first draft I possibly can. I used to not edit at all. I used to be like, I don't got time for that. But now I've got like a process with an editor, and sometimes I have beta readers, and especially if I have a couple of scientists on my newsletter. If I feel like the science may be a little wonky, I send it to them and ask them to give it a read. But for the most part, I write a draft. The story is exactly the way I want it when I'm done. My editor his first pass will be like, hey, you have this dangling thread here, or whatnot, but it's never like, he's not a developmental editor. There's no, because storytelling is the thing that I'm good at. And then it's all like corrections and typos and filling in misinformation, that kind of thing. So to answer your question, no, I wouldn't probably do a whole lot different because the writing wasn't the hard part. I am going to do this again in May probably, and it'll be for book 6 in the same series. I've got a whole bunch of books to write this month. The show I was telling you about one of them, or not this month, excuse me, this year. I've also got
this month. Jeez, man.
Yeah, I've also got I'm a book and a half into a 3-book series for Athon Publishing. So I've got to finish, and they're big ones. They're like 110, 120,000 words each. So I got to finish those, and they're epic military sci-fi. So they don't pants as fast because there's lots of research. Because I'm particular about my science and engineering and things like that. So I got a lot of books to write this year, and I also am promising my superhero people that I'm going to write more superhero novels with the Full Metal Superhero in them.
So with this,
I have to do that.
Yeah.
So with this 24-hour challenge, as far as like your readers, your viewers, all of that, do you think that it's kind of like helped to give you a different boost in that whole like, we have to put our marketing cap on, we have to put our author cap on, we have to put our business cap on? Do you like, how do you think your because like I know like other authors out there were just like eating it up, getting in there, being like, what's he doing? I want to know the nit, I want to know the grit. But as far as like your readership goes, how do you think they maybe took to it?
As far as I know, one reader showed up, and his name is
hey, that's awesome though. That's a super fan.
He's one of my super fans. Yeah, his name is Rutabaga Jones, which is the greatest name.
That's a great name.
He's actually in my books. He won a contest.
I was gonna say he needs to go to book, dude. That's a good.
Yeah, he won a contest for his daughter, and he got to be in the book as a superhero who worked for the Protectors in my Full Metal Superhero books, which if you haven't read are amazing and you should read. If I do say so myself. So he's really cool, but he doesn't like spoilers. So he came on to say hi, tell me that he was supporting me, and then he left. Oh, that's not true. I had two fans. I had this other kid come on, he actually lives nearby. He met me through the books though. I mean, he read the books and then found out I lived in the Boise area, and he begged his dad to bring him to meet me. So now his dad's a fan, and they popped on to say hi. They're really, really cool. I really like them. Those are, like you said, super fans. Those are people who buy everything I write, and they buy the audiobooks, and they buy the paperback books, and they buy the ebooks, and that's. I would drive across town if he was sick and make sure he was okay. That kind of fan. You know what I mean? He's like, you take care of those people. My wife made them a special poster just for them, and they got to see the Apex Predator cover before everybody else. That kind of thing. So the readers weren't really super interested in it. There is a kind of reader who likes a peek behind the curtain, but there's also, I think, a lot more readers who the peek behind the curtain ruins the mystery. Once you see how the secret sauce is made, not those secrets.
Not so much a secret, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what was the setup?
Oh,
sorry. What was the setup for this marathon? Like, what were you streaming on? Could you see a chat?
Stuff. That was my big disappointment, was how the technical aspect of it all worked out. I practiced and set things up. I used Streamlabs OBS, Sloth, as it's shortened to stream. It worked flawlessly. It was great. However, I did a lot of research trying to find the right hotel to go to because I have 4 kids. I couldn't do it from home. And so I had to find the right hotel to go to, and I found the one that had the best internet in town, and it was more than enough to stream live. Get there, internet's fine the night before. I get up at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, internet's terrible.
No.
If you watch the beginning of the stream, it's like the audio is fine, but the video is choppy. And it was like that all day. It got a little bit better in the afternoon. Then it was like that again at night. And I ended up having to call tech support several times, and they actually dropped my connection at one point. And so that's why I have two videos, because you wouldn't reconnect. And so I have 2 videos on there instead of 1, and which I think probably hurt me a little bit. And also I lost like 6 hours of the recording when it dropped. Because YouTube doesn't save after 12 hours until you end the stream. And because the stream dropped, instead of ending, it didn't save anything after 12. So from 12 to 18, no, I lost almost 8 hours. From 12 to 18, there's nothing there. And so you get the first 12 hours and you get the last 7 hours. So 12 to 17, you get the last 7 hours. Which,
it's an unforeseen setback that you just, like, you can't really prepare for something like that.
No, you can't. I mean, I had backups, and I had internet on my phone in case things didn't work. But I'd already tested it. It didn't work very well over my phone. It takes about 1 gig of data an hour to stream live. And I have like a 3 gig data plan, and so that wasn't going to work.
Could folks see your face and see your manuscript as you're typing it, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I did was I had set up with, at first it was set up with this really cool template, like there was like a nebula in the background, and it was really cool. And then when the internet sucked, I had to turn all that off. Thank you, Josh Hayes. That was his advice. And so I had the Scrivener's what I write in, so I had that full screen, and then up in the corner,
it's all backwards.
Here, was my face, and I was talking. And then I have a little webcam that I used, because right now we're on my laptop's camera, but I used this little Cam 113 that I bought at Costco for $50, and it's really good. It has a little shutter on it, and so that's why I wanted it, because I wanted to be able to turn the camera off without having to go into the settings and mess with the camera. So I just shut it off whenever I stepped out to go to the bathroom or get something to eat or whatever. Just muted myself, and then I just sat at the hotel desk, which was fine. Thanks, Josh. And it was great. It was a lot of fun. My only disappointment the whole night was that technical support thing. Everything else turned out way beyond my expectation. So much so that I talked my wife into doing it with me next time.
What?
Yeah, she's been writing an epic fantasy pretty much her whole life, but seriously for the last several years. And she needs to finish it. She needs to release it. So she's got several drafts of it done. And she just recently realized that she wants to push it out to 3 books instead of 1, because she had like a 250,000 word book written.
Wow.
And then she thought, well, I could cut that in half and sell it as 2, but nobody buys duologies. So she decided to do it in 3s, and she came up with this great storyline that would work it all in, and et cetera, et cetera. But because she's also very, very in-demand cover artist, because of her illustrations, she doesn't always have time to write. So she's going to do this again with me probably in May. And what we're going to do is we're going to both stream to something like this, where but it'll be just two of us, and so there'll be two manuscripts on the screen, and then our two faces in opposite corners, and we'll stay for 24 hours. So we're going to pack our kids up and send them off to their aunts, and we're going to do it from home, so we have good internet, and yeah, it'll be great.
How did the interaction with the audience go?
Oh, really cool. Really, really cool. And one of my big surprises was the fact that I was never alone. From the moment I turned it on to the moment I turned it off, there was not a point where somebody wasn't on watching and listening. Usually many somebodies. I think at one point I had 45 people watching.
Wow.
Oh, man.
And then at the low point, it was like 15. So even at like 4 o'clock in the morning, people were on, different, like there was a guy who came on, Sam Sykes?
Point?
Came on.
Sam Point from Australia?
Sam Point, yeah. He came on from Australia, and he was on with me all night. And, Walt Willard came on, and I had tons of people on. My brother came on, the punk. He came on, but didn't use his name on YouTube, so I didn't know it was him. And, he stayed with me for about 6 hours and talking to me, and, I was like, wow, this guy's really cool. He likes all the same movies I do,
That's hilarious.
Who is this person?
Yeah.
He has such great humor.
Yeah, he's like that. And it was fantastic having all those people there and watching. And then I love answering questions. So when people ask me questions about my writing process or decisions I make or things like that, I'm happy to answer and talk about it right then and there. I love it. I love helping people, and I love giving them insight. If I can, I think if I couldn't be an author anymore, I'd want to be a motivational speaker and do things like this, because so many people came to me and were like, oh my gosh, now I'm inspired to write. I'm going to go write for 5 hours or whatever, and I want to do this, and this reminded me how much I love writing and that kind of thing. And like James Aaron, a couple other people, they all started streaming their writing. The interesting thing about streaming and writing, if you're the kind of person who can do it, is you get more words done per hour than you would otherwise, because there is built-in accountability and a camera watching you do it. So you can't I'm going to go look at YouTube for an hour.
You can't just be writing. Write this sentence. I'm just going to check my phone really quick.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you're going to be there.
Words.
Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be writing. Okay, no, you're like the whole time.
Right.
And so I've been recording a lot of my writing lately to keep myself motivated. And there was something that happened during this 24-hour period that really surprised me. And it was the biggest revelation about myself. And this is a huge revelation. I'm 47. You don't get a lot of revelations about yourself as you get older. And this was really cool. In the past, I can write for about 5 hours and I'm mentally drained. Just, there's a place authors hit and you're bottomed out, right?
Yep, just got one way.
There's like your brain feels like something is holding it. It's just sort of slowing it down, creatively speaking. And it's always been that way. And I hit that and I'm like, I'm done, for the day. I know how it is. But I couldn't do that. I had to keep going. And a funny thing happened that never happened.
Ooh.
The slowdown, the creatively spent, I've used up all my creative energy for the day. No, it never happened. And the next day I wrote 2,000 words. And the day after that I wrote 3,000 words. And I've been pretty much writing 4,000 word days ever since. And what I found is that it leveled me up as a writer almost, so that I can sit down for 5 hours and write 5,000 words, no problem. Whether it's 10 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning. And the funny thing is I never used to be able to do that. I could not write after noon.
So it's almost like you retrained your brain in this 24 hours to simultaneously get back that sometimes the block we put in on ourselves, it's like I only have an hour to write in the day. So your brain's just like, cool, that's all we're going to give you. Then if you say we only have an hour, and you're just like, no, I'm pushing through this whole 24. And after that, your brain's just like, come on, let's just get the juices going. We were just all jazzed up for 24 hours. Let's do it. So that
so
that makes a lot of sense now.
And it's just instant access. I was working on a pitch before I came on the show, like 10 seconds after having fed my kids lunch, and before in the past, it would be like, I'd sit down in front of the computer and like, okay, I gotta get into flow mode and get creative and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's just, sit down and write. And it's
Facebook
cool.
user says, I checked in during the wee hours of the morning. He was still clicking the keys. Better than I would have done. Most I think I ever wrote was 3 hours broken up. That sounds familiar. I think that's me too. Me too.
And there's nothing wrong with that. 3 hours of writing is a solid writing day. People talk about writing speed and how much time they spend writing and stuff like that. It's all individual. Your only competition is yourself. Are you better than you were yesterday? Is your writing better than it was yesterday? That kind of thing. I know people who. I know writers who write 12 hours a day, and they write, 15, 16,000 words every single day and have for years. They also make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. You can't really compare yourself to those people, but what you can do is you can look at how they do it, how their work ethic, and try to emulate that. So that's kind of what I go for. When I first started in this business, I was looking at Chris Fox and Lindsay Broker, and I was like, I want to be like them. Not like do what they do specifically, but I want to make that kind of money. How do they do it? And how they do it is they do the work. They work really hard, and they work every day consistently, and they release books consistently, and so did I. And I'm going on like year 3 of completely self-employed, working author, making enough money to provide rent and all the other good stuff.
So when your viewers were watching you, did they give you any ideas on the book? Like, did they give you any ideas for the characters or lines, and were like, oh, I think she would say this or that? Did they do anything like that?
No. Most of the people watching were authors who weren't familiar with my work, so they didn't know who the characters were and stuff like that. However, at one point I was writing, and I needed the name for one of the main villains. So when you were talking earlier about like making up the names, the world building, stuff like that, I actually do have to do that on every book, because the only character that's consistent is like the main character and a couple of the side characters. But she's a Punisher style vigilante. I mean, I don't get villains from book to book because they don't make it to the end. Spoiler alert, she kills people. And so I have to come up, like in this book, it's the Russian mob. They're called the Gory, and she's, I had to come up with all the villains for that. And the main villain of the book, one of the main villains, is this woman who has emotional empathy and telepathy powers. And so I needed a name for her. And I also needed a name for the person she was manipulating. And so I was like, I had to take a break. And so I was like, okay, everybody tell me, what was it? I had people make something up. I forget. Oh, tell me your current work in progress in one line, literally. And everybody did it. And the one I liked the most, I picked, and I said, okay, if it's okay with you, I'll use your first name for this villain. And she said, sure. So Rachel. Uh-oh. Rachel Ox is who won.
Yeah.
And so the villain in the book is named Rachel. So.
Nice. All right. So before we continue digging into all these things, we're going to take a really quick moment for our spotlight. All right, today's spotlight is on Mars, a hard sci-fi anthology, Mohs 5.5, Book 2, by a cacophony of amazing authors, and a foreword by YouTube What Demath's Anton Petrov. The time has finally come for humanity to conquer Mars, or die trying. Sending probes and rovers is one thing. One day, mankind will have to go to Mars. Here are their stories. Though robotic explorers have vastly increased our knowledge about the Red Planet, there's still so much we don't know. Will Mars be a second home for humanity, or will it usher in our destruction? 13 hard sci-fi fiction writers take on the big questions in this groundbreaking anthology, which grapples with real-life scientific puzzles and dilemmas in the format of thrilling short stories. Mohs 5.5 stands for scientific rigor, and Mars stands for non-stop excitement. Explore the fourth planet from the sun by clicking now or doom. Yay! Super excited about that one. 4 reasons.
I love the or doom. One of these days, I'm gonna have a book with doom in the of doom at the end of the blurb, just so you guys can read it and be like, get to it and be like, I don't know what to do here.
Of yes. Doom and extra doom.
Buy it now or face your doom. There we go.
Well, the Keystroke audience was really excited to hear from you, and one of the questions we got ahead of time was from Julia V. She asked, did you ever hit a scene where you couldn't figure out how it was supposed to look, feel, or sound?
Yes. All of them. No. About 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Hi, Sabrina. That's my daughter. Hi, Sabrina.
Yeah, Rebecca posted, Sabrina's waving at the screen saying, hi, Papa. So I had to do that because it's adorable. Okay. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Best calm baby ever. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I ran into a problem. And I was like 7,000 words in, 8,000 words in. I'd written the hook, the inciting incident, and I just didn't really know where to go from there. And so it took me about 15 minutes of brainstorming to come up with what was next. I'm a very intuitive writer, so I understand story structure. I read a lot of books about story structure. To me, structure is everything. The book is. There are people who write books without structure and then apply structure later on, and I'm like, how?
It's hard.
For me, I'm always writing toward something. I'm writing toward a plot twist. I'm writing toward a turning point. I'm writing toward the middle. I'm writing toward the end. I'm writing toward something. And but yeah, so just getting past that first plot point, to figure out what happened next. And then about 4 o'clock in the morning, a little shortly after I got really tired, I drank like a 5-hour energy, and that pepped me up a little bit. And I had a scene where I was trying to figure out whose perspective it should be from, and that was kind of tough. And
honestly, there's been parts in some things where the whole scene is written in one POV, right? And you're going through, I do a lot of after editing, but editing it, and then I'm like, this whole scene does not work with this character. You have to rewrite it from an all new POV. Yeah.
And primarily superhero works are first person, my stuff is. Wraith is first person past tense, but I do other people's points of view in third person. The only thing in first person in Wraith is Wraith. And so in the scene I was writing, I ended up scrapping it and rewriting it from her sidekick's perspective. That was air quotes. You couldn't really say it's psychic. And it was a scene between her and this AI that is a fan favorite named Epic. And they have chemistry together. But he's a computer, and she's a person. And her superpower is that she can enter the electronic world of computers with her mind. So she can go in and interact with files and electron bits just with her mind. She doesn't have to have a computer. But she needs a cell phone in order to access the data world. And so she met this AI who is Arsenal's AI. And there was kind of like a moment between them, and I didn't really know what to do with it, and so I was just sort of trailing off to the end, and Becky's like, no, she has to. Rebecca's an amazing storyteller, and she was telling me like, no, he has to do something. He has to give her some information, and then he has to leave her with some doubt. Otherwise, what's the point of having him in the scene? And I put him in the scene as like a nod to my fans because I knew they would want him in there with her. And then my brain just exploded, and I was like, oh, he's going to lie to her, which is not something Epic has ever done before. So he lied to her at the end. At least she thinks he lied to her. And then that generated the entire ending, like, bolt of lightning, and I knew exactly where to go from that point forward all the way to the end of the book.
Wow.
So, and the end is going to blow people away, at least my readers anyways.
Wow, so that one thought kind of twisted the whole thing for you.
Yeah, and it wasn't even she wasn't even talking about, she was just talking about a scene between Croissant and Epic. Mm-hmm. Croissant's a sort of like daring do reporter, devil may care reporter who can access the internet with her mind. like in Shadowrun. And Epic is an AI who works for Arsenal. And I just was writing it because the fans liked it, and then she gave me that idea, and all of a sudden the reason he lied to her is why the ending happens, the way it happens, and it just boom exploded just like that. And that happens, when you're in flow mode, when you're in open mode, which is the mode our brains use to create things. Your brain will make connections that you can't make consciously. And that's why it's so important to study storytelling and study craft and like internalize and absorb it and practice it, because when you get into creative state, it's not like you're stopping and going, okay, what is the external motivation versus the internal motivation versus the push and pull, the character arc, and blah blah blah. And I know there are people who do that and they have it all diagrammed out, and that's great. I'm not disparaging that. I'm just talking about me and how I do it. I'll get into flow mode and everything will be coming out and all these connections will be being made. And then when I go back and read it later on, it's like my subconscious brain knew the story that I was writing before I did. And so all the brickwork is laid down and everything is great. And, and then it's just a matter of cleaning up and making all the connections a little bit tighter and working it out. So but that's why studying this stuff is so important. You can't just, I wrote a story once that people like, I'll just keep doing that same thing over and over again.
Right, and you've been kind of studying story and story structure for years now. Mm-hmm. So it kind of builds
up. My whole life, really. I mean, I DM'd since I was 12.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to be the best DM and tell the best story. And so you can't do that, without knowing what makes a good story. And I love movies so much, movies and TV shows, way too much. And so it was only natural for me to go from loving movies and TV shows to being like, okay, why is this making me feel the way I'm feeling? Why is it doing what it's doing? And of course, I read a lot too. So I mean, like, why do books do what they do? Because movies and TV shows are not books. And story structure is my jam. It's what I'm good at, and that's really helpful, especially as a pantser who just sat down and wrote a book without knowing anything about it other than the main character's name.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, so one bit of preparation going into something like this, definitely knowing, the structure of a story, like how the opening, the middle, and the end all tie together, how those little bridges in between them all tie together, and all the other little middle nuances and whatnot. Understanding that brick and mortar, definitely is going to help you build that house.
So. The seminal work on screenwriting is called Screenplay, and it's by a name I can't remember now. He passed away a few years. I can't remember. But anyways, he was the guy who basically codified screenwriting. And he said, he always told people, because he'd often hear this thing about, I don't want to stick to a structure because it's too formulaic or whatever. And he would compare it to a glass. He's like, a glass is empty, and you can put anything you want in it. You can put water in it, you can put steel in it, you can put molten lava in it. All it is the glass. It's the thing that holds it up. And that's what a story structure is. It's the thing that holds it up, unless you tell the story you want to tell. And there are a lot of ways to tell stories, a lot of different ways to tell stories. But the way to tell the stories that have endured throughout history are using the structure that the Greeks created, which was the 3-act structure, the sort of the hero myth, my brain just shut off.
Hero leaves home, crosses the threshold into the unknown.
Yeah, that's that guy, and all that stuff together. Gilgamesh is what I was trying to think of. That started back 8,000 years ago when Gilgamesh was written. Mm-hmm. Is the structure of how stories unfold and how much people, remember those stories. It's why people still read Odyssey today, is because of that kind of structure. It's why people will continue to be reading, Lord of the Rings for centuries because of that structure. And you read it and you're familiar with it because you've seen it and read it a million times. Your brain's not trying to figure out where that story is going. It's just focusing on the story itself and enjoying it.
Yeah, Corey notes the man of 1,000 faces.
Yeah, John Campbell.
Yeah. That there's something that resonates in our hearts, with this idea of leaving home, starting out having something kind of wanting in your life, or maybe wanting in you as a person. But as you go through and face those trials and tribulations and tests, and then face your darkest fear, death, and conquer it, get through that and come home, you come back stronger. And hopefully the readers coming with the character on that journey, and when they put down your book, they feel stronger too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just tell your book honestly and give it some truth and love it. That's an important thing. Love what you're writing. Love the genre you're in.
So after 24 hours of facing this challenge and writing, what did your draft look like? Because it sounds like it's still...
I reread it the next day. And another big surprise for me was I thought after 4 or 5 hours of writing, I'd be able to keep writing words, but they would all suck. And I think the best scene I wrote was at 2 o'clock in the morning. 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning was a fight scene outside of a mall where she just killed a whole bunch of people one by one while running down a line. And it was just super tight and fun to write. And it was just, all the words were really good. They just kept getting better as the night went on. To the point where when the timer ran out, I didn't even notice. And people were cheering and saying, "Hey, your time's up." And I'm like, "What? No, it's not 8 o'clock yet," because I messed up my timer. It was off by like 2 minutes, so the timer ran out 2 minutes before it was actually 8 o'clock. But it was just, it was great. That was one of my cool things is that I'm going to use all those words. There's no thing I'm not using from what I wrote. You polish it, of course, but I mean, it ended up being really, really good. And I think that's part of what that mindset thing was I was telling you about is that if you sort of like this thing happened and now my brain clicks over and we start writing and I get into open mode almost immediately. Hopefully it stays, because that's a hard thing to stay, because you have to, when you're writing, you have to sit down every day and you have to write, and you don't always have ideal conditions to write with. And if I can keep this up, that'll be great. No, we'll see though. I'll let you know in May.
So now that you do have like this huge chunk of the book written, and you're in this like perpetual flow state, hopefully for longer to come, how long do you think should projectorally, I don't even know if that's a word, do you think it'll take you to send it off to your editor and
I'm at 35,000 words now, as of this morning. So Tuesday or Wednesday I'll probably finish it and send it off to my editor, and he's pretty great. He'll probably get back to me in a couple of days, and then I'll fix whatever needs fixing, send it back to him. And usually I add 5,000 to 7,000 words in the editing process. I'm not an overwriter, I'm an underwriter, unfortunately. And I wish I was an overwriter. I have a friend who's CC Keke, who when he writes his books, they're like 180,000 words long, and then he chops out like 50,000 words out of his books, and I'm just like, you could just not write those words in the first place. I mean, save yourself some time.
You gotta get all that stuff out, man. Just gotta get it all out. And you don't have to worry about it.
I'm an underwriter. I have to go back in and look at my scenes and be like, okay, I just almost every scene is in media res, and so I just need I guess it's in media res, but I refuse to say it that way. So I have to go back in and set the scene. I'm terrible about setting the scene. The sensory perception of the scene, so people know where the characters are. I'm not great with names. Thug 1, Thug 2.
That's what I do until I'm just like, okay, almost to the end. Now I'm going to go back through. Okay, Thug. What was he going to be? Yeah,
right. Russian Mobster 1 in this case of this book. And one of the fun things about this book is it sounds so weird out of context. So just bear in mind it's out of context. It's finding really fun and interesting and visually appealing ways to murder people. Her number one kill was she killed this guy. Well, she didn't technically kill him; he killed himself. But she had some piano wire hidden in her high heel, and she wrapped it around him, and he was a telekinetic, and so he threw her away from him with all his power, but she'd already wrapped the cord around his neck, so off goes the weasel. So I got to one up that. And stuff like that. So, and plus there is, at this point, I'm 14 books into this universe, so there's world building elements I got to remember. I accidentally wrote this character, one of the side characters, the minor villain in the book, with superpowers that she didn't have in the last time she appeared. because it's set in New Orleans and there's a superhero team called the Saints. Because in my world, there's no sports teams. There's just superhero teams, and they have all the sports team names.
Oh, so,
cool! In Arsenal, she's a member of the Arizona Diamondbacks, the super team. And this one's the New Orleans Saints is the name of their super team. Real original, I know. Hopefully, they don't sue me. And so she was in book 2, which is called Welcome Home, which is probably my most popular book for the series. And I remembered writing her one way, and she was actually a different way. And so I made a note to myself, and I have to go back in and rework it. One of the things is that one of the reasons that she was in book 2, she's not invulnerable. A lot of people with superpowers are invulnerable, invincible, whatever. And she isn't. But I was writing her as if she was, and that was whoops.
So do you have like a wiki or a world guide that you kind of plug in all these little bits, or do you just like float it in the hemisphere?
That's such a great idea. I need to do it. I learned my lesson though. So I'm working on this military sci-fi, and I've got pages and pages of notes about the world, characters, equipment names, everything like that for my military sci-fi to keep it all straight. I wish I had done that from the beginning with my Arsenal series, but I was so busy writing it that I didn't really get into the habit. And now it's hard to stop the writing to write down names. With the military sci-fi, it's kind of easy just because I'm a lot more methodical with everything I write. And then I'm shooting from the hip, so to speak, with my superhero stuff. Because it's more... The military sci-fi brings me more joy mentally and as an author, but the superhero stuff is more fun. And so there's an element of like, wow, I love military books, and I also love books where people, shoot somebody and that person goes flying across the room, which isn't realistic at all in any way, by the way. There's no handgun or rifle in the world that you can shoot that will knock somebody down across the room unless it also knocks you down, because it's called physics. So, anyways.
Right.
At least I'm not aware of any. There might be one. But, so my superhero stuff is less realistic. The physical world is realistic, but there's superpowers, and I can take more rule of cool. And in the military sci-fi, I'm appealing to a different audience. They're all veterans. They're all looking for a specific kind of story I'm looking for. And so I'm a little bit more careful. Though Rebecca did note that she noticed for the first time in my writing that while I was writing my superhero stuff that I would stop and think about what my next sentence was going to be, and oftentimes I would delete the previous sentence and rewrite it, which isn't something I used to do when I wrote my superhero stuff. It just was straight on through, which is probably why I wasn't hitting 2,000 words an hour. But at the same time, there was a much cleaner draft than I've ever produced before. And then much better writing. So I'm not complaining with that at all. Plus 23,000 words to get started on a book that's 60,000 words long. I'll take it.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. No, that's a good chunk out of it.
So you mentioned a little bit about some anxiety, maybe for keeping on writing, and that was a question that we had earlier. With that ticking clock that authors, might have, might give them a raging case of anxiety. How do you fight through a similar feeling?
I suffer from anxiety, but having nothing to do with writing. I've got hypervigilance, which is like a form of PTSD, where I can't sit with my back to a door or window, or it's hard for me to relax and settle down. I get up in like the middle of the night, like more nights than not, and just walk through the house and make sure all the doors are locked and stuff like that. So that's where my anxiety comes from. So I have a lot of empathy for people who suffer from anxiety, because if anybody leaves the house for more than 2 hours and I don't know where they are, my anxiety level is like the next knock on the door is going to be the police telling me they're dead. I could have been there and I wasn't. Yeah. Anyways, but for writing wise, no, I didn't have any. It was I was a little worried when I first started that am I going to be able to write this? But then I had that talk with Chris Fox, and he's like, no, dude, you're going to be fine. You're going to write right through it. And he was right. I wrote right through it. The ticking clock on my screen, I have a Microsoft Surface Pro that I write on. It's only 13.1 inches screen, so I couldn't see the ticking clock. on my screen.
Ah.
So even if I could, I mean, it wouldn't. I don't think it would have bothered me, but that was more for the audience than and less for me. I had my own mental clock going to know how much I was trying to write, and I'd reset my script every time I'd take my break so that I knew where I was at the end of every hour, and I almost always hit between 700 and 1,500 words every single hour, so I was pretty happy with that.
Would you recommend that other authors try this out?
Here's what I would recommend. Try streaming your writing and see how that makes you feel. I wouldn't jump right to the 24-hour thing. If I had decided to do this and then stream for my writing and I hated it, I would not have done it. But I know me pretty well. I mean, if you guys at this point, if you search Jeffrey H. Haskell, I've been on your show twice. I've been on Josh's show 3 times. I've been on Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketplace a couple of times. I've been on a bunch of podcasts here and there. I have no problem with the camera or talking to people. You met me at 20 books. I'll talk to your ear off.
Gotta look up.
Being in front of the camera is definitely something that you do have to get used to, because you're just sitting here, especially when you're by yourself, you're just talking to yourself, and you have to. Yeah, it's a different thing. So.
Well, you do Storytime, Kalene, that I love, by the way.
Aw, thank you.
So I've actually thought about doing that because I watched you do it, and I was like, that looks like a lot of fun. Maybe I should do that.
It is. It's so fun. It's just it's totally off the hip. I screw up lines, all the time. Just that's the wrong character, and I just keep going.
I need to write something that's just for story time.
Yes.
Because my books, my audiobooks are all through Tantor, so I don't think they'd appreciate me putting my superhero books up on YouTube. That could be a rights issue. I'm not sure.
So that's why I only do the first chapter, and only what you can find in the look inside on Amazon, because anyone has access to that.
Gotcha.
That is exactly why. So it saves all the legal stuff.
I've got a bunch of books. I've got a lit RPG I wrote that I'm almost done with, that I actually wrote in a month. And it's I think I've written 95,000 words on it, and I really like it. And I reread it recently. I was like, I got to finish that. And Dakota Kraut wants me to write him a superhero lit RPG, and so maybe one of those I can do story time on. But if you like being in front of a camera, you better than I know you. If you like being in front of a camera and you have no problem writing with people in the room, then you're going to be fine. But definitely, if you have a lot of anxiety about A, writing around other people, or B, having people read what you write while you write it, that's a big one. A lot of people can't do that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not like a weird person because you don't want people to read your writing. Most authors, dare I say almost all authors, probably have shown their works to people before, and got people they care about, and people that whose opinions they respect, and said, hey, look at this thing I created, only to have them tear it apart and rip it up. And so that really puts a damper on you wanting to share your work with people. So I get that. So it took me a long time to get to the place where I am, where it's like, okay, I've sold 50,000 books. I don't need your good opinion, because I have readers who tell me that my books are good, and who email me and tell me it's the best book they've ever read or whatever. And those emails are gold, and print those out and frame them. I love that. So if it's your first book, maybe not, but if you are comfortable writing in front of people and you're comfortable on camera, do it. It's so much fun. So much fun. And make sure you tell me, and I'll put it on my Facebook page, and I'll make sure I show up, because it is a lot of fun.
It's happening a lot more often. There are so many more authors that I'm seeing. They're doing live sprints. It's like a whole new wave of interaction and writing juices and gumption. And so, yeah, I agree.
I don't know if I started it, but it'd be cool if I did. I've seen writers write on camera before. That's not like a new thing, but there's a whole bunch of writers who've contacted me and said, hey, I started streaming my writing. I'm so much more productive. I'm getting so much more work done. I have a friend, I won't say who his name is, but he is listening right now. He's considering going back to work part-time because he needs to get out of the house. Well, he needs to get his happy butt writing more is what he needs to do.
Oh.
I'm not saying who you are, but
dun, dun, dun.
You know who you are. I mean, if I had enough time during the day to consider a second or a part-time job or whatever, even though I'm making enough money as a writer, I'd be like, I need to write more. So yeah, anyways. And, now that I've done the 24-hour thing, I realize I really could if I wanted to. I mean, I could write all day long now. I mean, how could I not? One time, about 7 years ago, I climbed a 13,000-foot tall mountain with a bunch of Boy Scouts, a bunch of 18-year-old Boy Scouts, and they just smoked me. I mean, they made it all the way up, right? And so did I. They got there first, but it wasn't a race. So now I know I can climb a 13,000-foot mountain. So if I ever had to climb a 13,000-foot mountain again, I would know that I have done it. And when I was in the Army, all kinds of stuff like that too. So now that I've written for 24 hours, I know I can. So I don't really have an excuse not to write for 6 hours or 8 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was very freeing of my brain to do that.
Yeah, we've heard of other authors using Twitch to stream their writing, Facebook Live to stream their writing, just setting up a Discord channel with other writers and turning on the audio and talking to each other as they write, zooming together while they write, and it just is a little bit of accountability. And I guess if they're the right person, bouncing ideas off each other too.
Yeah, that could be cool. I'm it's gonna sound so quick. So I'm not a fan of other people's ideas about my work. I really am not. Most people, myself included, look at somebody else's work and go, well, if I were writing it, and I'm well, it's not that other people don't have good ideas, but I like mine. And, the only person I really go to for ideas and really use ideas from is Rebecca, because me and her, we talk all the time about storytelling and writing and stuff like that. And every once in a while, she'll give me a great idea and I'll use that. But I mean, I'm like, my book, my ideas kind of thing. But there's nothing wrong with the community idea bouncing, for sure. But yeah, it really is. It's a lot of fun to stream your writing. I just wish I had more. I wish I had an office to do it from. That's my project for this summer. Is I think I'm going to make an office in my garage. It's like a really small office because it's not a big garage, and use that to stream my writing in the mornings or whatnot. Maybe we'll see.
Just to kind of separate the distractions off a little bit. Well,
I mean, I got 4 kids. One of them is 18 months. The other is 5. And, 8 a.m. rolls around. They're in here.
Yeah.
So, and I get up at 5:30 to start writing at 6. So, that's my writing time on days that Rebecca isn't available to get up with them. So, and most days she is. She's extremely supportive of my writing. And, well, I mean, obviously I'm supportive of her cover design because she's amazing. Vividcovers.com.
Yes, I'm super excited. I still need to write something because I won.
Oh, that's right, you won. You won. Where were you?
Someone had to tell me. They're like, "Oh, look at this thing that happened." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, I forget what you won, but it was really cool. She just spent the last 2 weeks hand drawing and rendering pencil drawings for an author in New Zealand, and It was a work-intensive thing, but they turned out gorgeous. And I was looking at them like, how much did he pay you to do this? Because I want you to do this for my characters. But the cover I get for free. Everything else I gotta shell out the bucks for. Yeah, but she's amazing. So it's a lot of fun to have her to be like a couple where we're both writers. She's an artist, a cover designer, and she and I are constantly talking about this stuff. So I feel very fortunate because I know a lot of writers who are like their significant other couldn't be less interested in what they're doing, or get the that's not a real job. We need to get a real job, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
there's nothing quite like having that other person where you're just like thing, and they're just like, all of it, and then.
I had a friend of mine in England. I won't say her name, but she started at the same time I did, and her husband was kind of like that, like, you're making some money, but what are you doing, blah, 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 blah. And then she had a 6-figure year. And all of a sudden he's like, I'm going to go to school and learn marketing, and I'm going to learn all this stuff to support your career because you're making so much money. And he did. It's amazing. I mean, he really, he's her agent now almost. And I thought that was kind of cool. Sometimes all it takes is the proof is in the pudding kind of thing where like, hey, here's my amazing year. Do you think it's a real job now?
So we at Keystroke, we're trying to deliver the best content we possibly can for y'all out there, and we have begun kind of pulling together these like core questions that we sort of want to start asking everybody. We don't have a name for it, but I'm just going to start throwing it out there. One of my favorite ones that we
question kiosk.
Ooh, question kiosk. I love it. You hear that, Josh? Write that down. All right. So one of my favorite ones that we kind of have going on right now is, what is your favorite story element?
You don't know who you're messing with. Let me give you an example. Have you seen The Equalizer with Denzel Washington?
Yes.
No, Kalene's seen it? Okay, awesome. Okay, there's this scene where Denzel walks into this Russian bar, and there's this... You are made to believe that he is a big deal, super scary hitman, crazy bad, cold-blooded killer. You're a piece of lint to him, right? And Denzel Washington sits down in front of this guy, and he starts talking to him. And the guy's like, ooh, trying to intimidate Denzel Washington. And in this moment, he doesn't realize it, but you, the audience, realize that there is at no point in this movie that Denzel Washington is actually in danger. It's like all these Russian guys are the ones who are in danger. And at the end of the movie, you have this amazing turnaround where this guy is about to die, and he just screams at Denzel Washington, "Who are you?" And it's just like, oh, so good. So yeah, the you don't know who you're messing with moment is probably my favorite reveal in any story. It's the you just punch Superman in the face, whoops, kind of thing. And I love that. That's my favorite story element.
That was a good answer. Good answer. Been watching a lot of Steve Harvey. Sorry.
He's hilarious and so motivational. Have you watched his motivational stuff?
Not yet.
I didn't know he had motivational stuff.
Yeah, he talks to the audience in between the game show. He'll talk to the audience and he'll tell them stories and he'll talk to them about success. He's amazing. You gotta watch Google him or YouTube, go to YouTube and Google Steve Harvey inspirational. And you'll get tons of stuff with him talking to people about how to be successful and how to bring up your family and your friends and things like that. Any more questions?
Well, I was just gonna say thank you for coming on, and then Lauren, if you had any lingering thoughts or whatnot.
Well, John Evans did ask, will you arrange Keystroke Coffee sponsorship next time, or are you wedded to Coke?
Here's the thing, and I didn't, Josh, I'm very sorry I didn't tell you this when you first offered, because I didn't really realize the implications of it, but I don't drink coffee.
Dun, dun, dun.
There's always that.
But I was happy to bring the shirt and wear it and show the coffee mug and talk about your coffee. It smelled delicious. I mean, that's the thing about coffee with me is it smells fantastic. It doesn't necessarily taste like it smells, but it smells great. And so I had my neighbor over and she had the coffee and she absolutely loved it. So, and I figure she's a coffee connoisseur because she drinks a lot of it. So, so that's up to Josh. If he wants to sponsor me again and send me some coffee, maybe I'll give it away on the podcast or whatnot. I was really fortunate to get some really great sponsors with Keystroke Medium, and then of course Alex Newsom. I never say his last name right. Sorry, Alex. Akalytics, absolutely amazing guy. He gave me a Akalytics membership to show off on us, which I will do at some point on a stream, just to kind of give people an idea of what's out there and why it's worth it. And then of course Dave at Kindlepreneur was also super helpful, and yeah, it was fantastic. I wouldn't necessarily call them sponsors per se, but they were people who were very encouraging to me, who helped me be excited about the project. Alex said that it was like the most exciting marketing thing that he had ever heard an author doing, which is like high praise.
Yeah, for real.
And then Ryan Schwartz, who is a marketing guy for Games Workshop, and he also runs the cover gallery, said that he's like, this is marketing gold. You got to keep doing this. You got to do it some more. And I'd do it once a week if I could, but it took me 3 days to recover.
Yeah.
So,
see, that's actually something we didn't. I didn't even think to ask was recovery time on just the sheer. I mean, because it's got to be really taxing on your body, to stay up for that 24 hours. Earlier on, I guess I do have one more question. Earlier on, you're mentioning a lot of the research you did on health-wise to make sure that you were, making sure your body was going to be able to pull through this and not just completely, go off the rails. So what is like one like big thing, especially for authors who like me? I have a really tough time sitting for any length of time, so I have to constantly be like up and moving around every 30 minutes to an hour, or my back's just going to be like blown out. Shall we stop? So what's one bit of health advice that you've found?
Breaks. I schedule the breaks, 45 minutes and break. And if 30 minutes works for you, then do 30 minutes. And I specifically got the stretches so I can stretch out. I got a bad back, shoulder, neck, knees, you got it, you name it, it's there. So I stretched all of that out every 45 minutes. Staying hydrated really, really makes a big difference. And obviously having a comfortable chair with back support is a big must. For the last 3 hours of the stream, I stood. I put my laptop up on a desk, on a shelf, and I wrote on the shelf. Just because I couldn't sit down anymore. So, and I'm having some lingering problems, like my left leg hurts a lot. The next day, I think I slept for maybe 4 hours. I couldn't really sleep after I did it. But
you've been consuming caffeine in Coke form every hour. Yeah. I'm surprised you don't have a migraine.
And then and then but like Thursday night, like the next night I slept for like 11 hours, and it just and I was like zombie for 3 or 4 days, so it's tough. So it's a once a quarter thing. It's not going to be a once a month thing even. So it's a once a quarter. So I'll probably do it 3 more times this year, and use it as an opportunity to either finish a book I've been wanting to finish or get a good start on a book I want to get a good start on.
Alrighty, well, y'all heard it here. Thank you, everyone in our live chat. John Evans was here, Corey, Carolyn, Patricia, Josh, all y'all. Thank y'all for coming and joining us. And thank you, Jeff, for giving us a bit more of an insight on this, because I think a lot of people, when they think about it, they're like, oh, preparation in writing, preparation in the character development, the story, and you're just like, no, health. Look at, you were researching that, so I think that's really important to remind people of, because it's something that we sometimes don't talk enough about, is our health as authors. Your back support, getting up and moving around, keeping your blood going, your hydration, your eyes. Like I got blue light glasses for when my eyes start to get strained, and I notice a noticeable pressure on my eyes I didn't realize was there when I put them on. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and if you're as an author, you got to trust your authorial skills. And if you're not in the place where you can, then obviously this is not a challenge you want to try yet. But maybe it's something you can work toward. But yeah, it's story-wise and stuff like that. You got to trust the process. You got to have a process, and you got to trust the process. Half of figuring out how to be an author is figuring out the process you need to write a book. And then fine-tuning it over the years until you have one that's like a factory. But you got to trust that. You can trust yourself. It's the health stuff that you need to worry about, because it'd be really easy to get into that zone that we've all gotten into, and then all of a sudden 18 hours have gone by, and you go to move, and things are like crack, crack, crack.
Oh yeah, I've not been able to move for a week because that I've done that. Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, real quick, where can people find your stuff?
My books are available on Amazon in both ebook, print book, and audiobook on Audible. But you can also find my audiobooks everywhere audiobooks are sold. So just do Jeffrey H. Haskell audiobook if you like audiobooks. My entire Full Metal Superhero series is audio, done by the amazing Emily Beresford, who's the same voice actress who did Michael Anderle's main series. And the Wraith books are just now coming out in audio, which is another reason why I did this now. Done by the amazing Lacey Laurel. And the first one is out on Audible, and the rest are coming shortly. And so, yeah, that's where you can find me. And then later this year, early next year, Aethon Books will be publishing my premier military sci-fi series called Grimm's War. And you can find that too.
Alrighty, well, you heard it here. Definitely take into consideration your health and know your own process before starting something so incredibly amazing. I would not be doing it anytime soon, but it definitely is
We should all do it together, Kalene.
that would be fun. Look at him trying to challenge me. I see you, Jeff.
Keystroke Medium 24-hour book challenge. Everybody who books Keystroke Medium. Bam.
All the mediums.
All the mediums writing our books live.
Hey.
We'll have to discuss. Alrighty. Well, everyone there, thank you for joining us on your writer's journey. Be sure to check us out next time. I am 99.9% certain this is our new showtime. We are so sorry for keeping changing it on you. There's a lot of stuff going on in our lives that just has been a moment. So thank you for your patience as we figure out that. And check us out next week for more reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Mediums, The Writer's Journey.